I truly believe that if you want to have great customer or client experiences, you have to have great employee experiences, because who's actually delivering the experience for the customer? It's you, the owner, your team, your employees, the people you work with. And so I really see it as we improve one, we necessarily improve the other. But if one is circling the drain and going down, we're probably pulling the other side of the conversation down as well. Unhappy employees make for unhappy customers.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be an absolute fun one. Our returning guest is a speaker and author of Never Lose a Customer Again. He's also the author of a very new book that we're going to be talking about today. Joey Coleman, welcome back to the show.
Michael, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute delight to be back on the show. And thanks to everybody who's listening in. You know, I know some people may say spending time hanging out with bookkeepers could be a challenge, but I know that if you don't have the right bookkeeper, your business is not going to be around very long. So super excited to get some time with your listeners too.
Oh, I love it. And I know our listener right now is pumping a fist in the air going, yes, Joey knows it. Joey knows it. So that's wonderful. Joey, you've been on the podcast before. Lovely to have you back. I would love to hear an update and maybe just a little bit of your background for those that maybe didn't catch your first episode, but tell us a little bit about your backstory and what you've been up to since you've been last on the podcast.
Sure. So for the last 20 plus years, Michael, I have helped to teach companies how to keep their customers and keep their employees. My focus has been all around the experiences we create for the humans we interact with, whether those are the people we're serving as our clients or customers, or the people we're going to work with every day as our fellow colleagues and coworkers. And I do that in a variety of ways, most notably writing books, giving speeches, leading workshops, and then doing coaching and consulting engagements that are all built around how can we let our remarkable spirit show more in a way that attracts the right people to us and keeps them engaged and focused.
Wonderful. Well, it's absolutely lovely to have you. And I know so many of our listeners and people that we work with, because of your podcast, have read your book and have implemented the teachings and the trainings into their businesses. And I've heard anecdotal things throughout the community over the years of them doing so. And in fact, here we take some of your lessons as well and have implemented some of those things. So it's been just an absolute joy to have you, but also a real valuable, selfishly valuable resource having you and the work that you do in our community.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate that. Nothing makes at least this speaker and writer happier than knowing that the information I'm sharing with folks is being implemented and that they're finding value in it. And that's, one of my main goals. If you're going to invest the time to read a book or listen to a book or listen to a speaker on stage or over a Zoom call or, on a YouTube video, I want to appreciate and value that time. And I believe there are three types of speakers and writers in the world. There are those that want you to think differently, those that help you to feel differently, and those that encourage you to act differently. And while I certainly want my audiences to think and feel differently after they spend time with me, if you don't act differently, I don't feel I've earned your investment of time, effort, or money. And so hearing you say that even with your own team, you've been able to implement things that have changed the way you operate your business. You've heard that from your community. I so appreciate that because that's my personal end goal. And that's what keeps me going.
Well, you did your job and you've done it well because we did think differently when we heard it and we felt differently and then we acted on what we thought and what we felt. And it's also, I want to say, like in a small business, we don't have a ton of resources. And often one can think or have heard people say, oh, like we don't have the resources to do those things. And really what I loved about the work that you do is just the thinking that we can take and apply. Even a small thing makes a massive difference. And so it's not about transforming the whole business overnight. It's about doing things like we're here. We want to get there. We want to be awesome in the first 100 days, right? And we want to do the best we can for our customers. Can we change it all in 100 days? Probably we could. But we do and did as much as we possibly could, but we knew where we were going, and we had a great guide in you to be able to make small changes over time. And we're still doing things. And that's why I'm looking forward to your new book, because that's the other side of it, like you said. And you're absolutely right. It's humans, right? Whether they're working with you as customers and clients and all that good stuff, or the people in your business that are working with those customers. And so tell us a little bit about your new book.
Well, Michael, it's interesting. People for 20 plus years, the bulk of my public facing world has been around customer experience. So when I started sharing with people that I was researching and writing a book on employee experience, I got some pushback from folks saying, wait a minute, is this a departure from what you were doing? Are you trying to reinvent yourself as something new? And what's interesting to me is customer experience and employee experience are two sides of the same coin. I truly believe that if you want to have great customer or client experiences, you have to have great employee experiences, because who's actually delivering the experience for the customer? It's you, the owner, your team, your employees, the people you work with. And so I really see it as we improve one, we necessarily improve the other. But if one is circling the drain and going down, we're probably pulling the other side of the conversation down as well. Unhappy employees make for unhappy customers. Frustrated, irritated, annoyed customers make it really hard to go to work and deal with them every day as employees. So I think there are really two opportunities for employers and business owners to focus on some key details and key metrics that can really move the dial in the overall success of your business.
I absolutely agree. And you were working on that other end, the customers for all these years. What pivoted you over to this? What had you say, I'm going to write this book?
Well, I thought all along, I had been in customer experience for about 5 minutes, Michael, before I realized that employee experience and customer experience were inextricably linked, right? We have to have great employees to deliver great customer experiences. But in most organizations, those are seen as two very separate worlds. Customer experience is often owned by, the account management team or the sales and marketing team, the people who are frontline dealing with customers, whereas employee experience is often either in an HR department in a larger organization, or, to be blunt, and I'm a fellow small business owner as well, it's falling to the responsibility of the business owner who hasn't needed or been able to afford hiring a full head of HR, but yet is managing employees and is trying to fit the employee experience conversation into their already long agenda of running the business, growing the business, operating the business, finding new clients, serving existing clients, etc. And as a result, it often doesn't get the attention or focus it needs. And so my approach to writing books and giving speeches is it can feel pretty overwhelming to say, you've got to worry about all your customers and all your employees in the same conversation. And so by dividing it into separate books and separate conversations, I like to think that it's a little more palatable and a little more achievable by saying, here are a handful of things you can focus on doing in the next week or 2 weeks that will appreciably move the dial on the experience for either your customers or your employees.
I love it. And it's so true. I mean, you lay it out so clearly, right? These are our people, and as small business, and that's our listener, as we talked about a little bit before we started recording the show, our listeners are small business, micro businesses. And so they probably going, exactly. I don't have time to think about these things, nor even maybe have thought that much about it. They want the client, they want staff, they want a team member, they want them to stick around, but really, what are they doing about it, or do they have time to do anything about it? So maybe let's start there, thinking about a small business owner, like a micro business, couple of staff, or even solo going to have staff, what are typically the mistakes that they're making out of the gate?
Well, I think there's a couple of things at play, Michael. And, for context, or at least to maybe explain the lens that I view the world from, in the new book, Never Lose an Employee Again, there are over 50 case studies. And over half of those come from businesses that have less than 100 employees. So businesses like yours, folks that are listening, right? We have case studies of solo entrepreneur businesses with maybe 2 or 3 people, 4 or 5. It's these smaller, whether we call them small businesses, micro businesses, et cetera. And one of the things that I think is really important to acknowledge is that most businesses don't hire someone to be responsible for HR or their people issues until they're about 20 plus employees. That's great. And I understand practically why that happens. But stop and think about all the challenges and mistakes and problems you've created in hiring those first handful that now you're trying to dig out from underneath as you think about bringing some systems or some process to the table. What I hope that Never Lose an Employee Again is going to do is give readers and listeners a playbook that allows them to make smart employee decisions from the first hire going forward. So even if you've never hired someone before, and frankly, if you haven't, I would posit that the stakes are even higher. If you're a solo entrepreneur and you're going to hire your first employee, whether that's a full-time employee or a part-time employee, or maybe a remote worker that's going to do, virtual support for a couple hours a week, they're going to now be 50% of your organization, right? If you're a solo and you hire one, now at least 50% of your business, if not more, is potentially going to be impacted by this other person. And I think many business owners, when they make those first few hires, they're hiring from a place of need, a place of urgency, a place of frustration, and a place of overwhelm. I don't know about you, Michael, but when I come to any situation in my life from a place of need, frustration, or overwhelm, I'm probably not thinking as clearly as I could be. And so I think there's an opportunity to try to step back just a little and think a little more long-term, think a little more strategically, think a little less emotionally to say, what do I want this process to look like and feel like, and my culture and the experience of working within my organization to be, before I go doing job postings and interviews and hiring and onboarding and, deciding how I'm going to build out and scale an enterprise.
I think it's right on the mark, and I will. I've heard way too many times, and I'm sure I'll hear it a few times in the future. Is, well, everything's gonna be okay. I'm gonna hire somebody.
Yeah, no, wait, and I understand and I empathize with this.
Oh, me too. I've been that guy.
I have too. We have the best hopes and the best expectations, and I think what I'll speak for myself, and maybe this resonates with some of the folks listening in. There are so many things that I do in my business, that I've been doing in my business for years, that come so clearly and so obviously to me that when asked to train a new team member on how to do it, it's almost like training a new team member on how to breathe. I'm like, well, I do this. I don't know why I do it. I don't know how I do it. I just do it on autopilot. So just watch me and do what I do. That's not an effective way to bring somebody onto the team. And so something that I did recently, I hired an assistant. And the first thing I did is decided that she's not my assistant. She's the director of details. And that's her title. And that's what she was hired for. And our early conversations were all around, your most important job is to pay attention to the details, because I'm moving in a lot of directions. I'm a keynote speaker. I travel all over the world, and I may not even know what time zones I'm going to be in next week, let alone what emails are coming in, text messages, WhatsApps, messengers, new leads from prospective clients, existing conversations with current clients, managing all of this. And so one of the things we did early on, which I highly recommend for any new hire, is job shadowing, where we got into my email, and one of her responsibilities is to look through my email and be responding to the messages she can. And we spent an hour every day for the first 2 weeks just doing a screen share and me walking through and responding to emails.
Wow.
And anytime I did something that seemed either illogical or uncertain to her, she would stop and say, why did you just do it that way? Why did you respond to that email with 5 sentences instead of 2 words? Why did you skip responding to that email? Why did you CC someone else on that email? Why did you send this scheduling link but not this other scheduling link on that email? And it allowed her to learn in real time, practically based on what I was doing. Now, the other thing I did, which is something that I think every business owner could do a lot more of, is creating standard operating procedures and systems. And part of her job was, as we went through the email, to start drafting what those were. And then after we did about 5 one-hour sessions, I said, great, let's see what standard procedures you've put together already. And then we spent time reviewing those. And I would look at it and say, oh, here's something that I missed telling you because I just did it naturally and thought you would catch on and understand, but not due to any fault of yours, due to fault of mine of not being clearer. And as a result, over the course of the next few months, we built out a whole library of systems and procedures and learnings on how she should handle certain situations based on real world examples, as opposed to what I think most business owners do, which is, so you can just kind of figure out it as you go along. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Yeah.
That's not a recipe for success.
Not a recipe. Recipe for chaos.
It is
a recipe. It is a recipe.
Well, and as bookkeepers, we would never do that, right? We would never say, hey, why don't you just handle these journal entries in whatever way seems most logical to you, and we'll sort it out on the back end. Oh
That's
my
right.
God, no. That's why we hire bookkeepers, because many business owners are behaving that way. Or here's a shoebox of receipts. Can you make it happen? You know, when left to our own devices, most humans create some chaos. So if we want a system, if we want a process, if we want people to operate the way we think is the optimal way to do it, we've got to spend the time educating and teaching and training them.
Absolutely. It's a great tip. I love the shadowing and also the SOPs. We talk about SOPs a lot over here because in bookkeeping is very technical. And so unfortunately, what you said is actually does happen. People hire someone and they say, oh yeah, I've been bookkeeping a long time. Yep. Good. Check. Oh yeah, no problem. And then, go work with this client. Wow. Oh my goodness. Right. It happens. And then it's all done wrong. And that goes on, even if it goes on for just a short period of time, everything's done wrong. So it all has to be redone. The client's not going to be happy. And the person didn't work out, and frustrations and all good stuff. So it's a big piece that we do at Pure Bookkeeping, which is we build SOPs, standard operating procedures, solve a problem with the system and build a system-driven business versus a people-driven business. The thing you said about the shadowing is that many people, when they're even with an SOP, right, there's always that lateral thinking, like your mind, like you've been at this a while, and the things you do, the tricks you do on the computer, probably, and the way you do things. It's like being able to give people that way to go, but also demonstrate the lateral thinking that you use. That's such a gift to your team member that can learn from all of those years of experience and actually see it right in front of them. And, I've often seen people, when you're showing somebody, like, just I think the thing is, you said, I want you to be the chief details person. Pay attention to the details, because a lot of the times I think people, and this is for maybe anyone out there, is when you're watching somebody else do something, it's often an opportunity to check your phone, or it's like, oh, that person's just doing something. It's like, how are they doing it? There's gold in those hills.
Absolutely. And here's the interesting thing, Michael. I also established early on with, and I want to call her by name, Faith, who's my director of details, because I love speaking specifically about folks that are on my team and supporting. One of the things I said to Faith early on is, I also realize that I may be doing things that are foolish, that you have a better way of doing. I want you to feel empowered to do that. And so as we went through, I also had a layer of, great, now we're going to get into the email inbox. You're going to log in as me, share screen, and I'm going to watch you drafting emails and see what you're doing. And I would ask, why did you just do that? Or why are you signing off that way? Or what are we doing? And, there are a couple of things that are standard in my behaviors that may not be the best choices. And I think the best leaders in the planet are open to the fact that there may be a smarter way or a more efficient way or a more effective way to do it. And when we empower our employees, our team members, our people to share their ideas early on, I'm talking week one, not, after you've been here and you figured things out, then tell me your ideas. Oh my goodness. One of the case studies that didn't make the book is from the Ritz-Carlton. And with all due respect, folks, stop and think about the Ritz-Carlton didn't make the book. So there's some great case studies in the book, right? The Ritz-Carlton on day 21 of a new employee's experience, they bring the employee into a meeting with the senior managers. So it's their direct boss as well as the senior leaders. And the premise of this conversation is, what are we doing that you think is just silly or foolish or a mistake or a missed opportunity? They get that brand new employee before they become jaded, before they become caught up in, we've always done it this way, so that's why we do it. And they say, what are we doing that you're like, why do you do it that way? And to your point earlier, they find gold in those conversations because a new employee will look at it and say, well, you're doing these 3 steps in a row, but what if you just did this one thing? It would take 3 steps and go down to 1 step. And half the time they're like, oh my God, we never thought of it that way because our SOPs, our institutional knowledge is so behemoth and moving and has such a momentum that it's hard for us to see from within the bottle. It's hard to read the label within the bottle, but a new employee brings that unique perspective, those fresh eyes. And if you're not capitalizing on that in your business, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to not only get their perspective, but to empower them early on that if you see something, say something. If you see an opportunity for improvement, that type of behavior is rewarded in our culture and in our organization.
So rare and so amazing. I mean, when you think about it, it's like, I just started here, but I know you're the Ritz, but let me show you how it's done. It's like, there's no permission, in anyone's mind thinking I'm going into this business. I just got this job and I'm going to, you'd really have to create an environment that would be completely safe for someone to say, look, I know you're the Ritz. You're one of the best hotels and resorts in the world, but let me tell you, you're doing this wrong. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I think it really speaks to the culture they're trying to create, and you see it with how empowered employees feel to take care of their guest.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I can say I have not stayed at a Ritz, but I've eaten at a Ritz, and it was remarkable. And the whole experience around the people, it felt like I was having lunch at someone's home. This really was the experience.
Yeah.
So,
one of their core mottos is, we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
Like, that's just such a higher standard. And that's why I would posit when you went into the Ritz, it felt remarkable. It felt different. That ethos is baked into their employee experience and their culture from day one on the job.
Amazing. Amazing. So I love what you're saying here, and it's valuable. And I think that's the other side of it too, is even though the Ritz is doing, there's no reason why you've just done it. You're a solo, very small business, not solo, but you're a small business, and you're yet giving the same experience to that employee that started with you, is that I want you to tell me how I can do things better, right? And such a great way to build a relationship out of the gate. I mean, that's so, it's like the time you spent with that person, the communication that was being developed. I mean, powerful stuff.
Well, I appreciate that, Michael. I also want to flag, because I'm imagining some of the folks are saying right now, well, Joey, that sounds fine and dandy, but I don't have an hour to give every day to let someone shadow me. Mm-hmm. Or this is a 1099 employee, Joey, or a part-time employee. I have to pay for every hour that they're working. I understand that. And you get 2 choices. You can either pay for it now or pay for it later. And what I mean by that is you can either make the investment now to get the foundation of the relationship right from day one, to structure the type of culture you want to have in your organization from the outset, or you can try to dig out from underneath the mess in the future. When you either lose that employee, you have to hire another employee, you're not getting the level of performance or experience that you want out of that existing team member. I think whatever you can do to devote the time in the beginning is going to serve you long term. Now, something that, and she isn't listening to this while we're recording it, but she'll be hearing this soon, my director of details, Faith, she's been working with me now for about 4 months. We are about ready to go into another 2 weeks of shadowing.
Wow.
And the reason for that is I want to see what has stuck or hasn't stuck. I want to see and feel where are things that maybe something slipped through the cracks. I don't want to wait to do an annual performance review. By the way, if you're doing annual performance reviews, that's great, but you're waiting too long. You need to be doing performance reviews at least twice a year. And by a performance review, I don't mean just telling the employee, hey, what you're doing isn't up to snuff. I mean telling the employee, here are the things you're doing remarkably well. Here are the things that you're doing, but there's an opportunity for improvement. And here are the things that you're doing that we just really shouldn't be doing them that way. I want to do them differently. But you also need to create the space for the employee to give you that feedback. We're getting ready to do my review. Let's be clear. My director of details is going to be doing a review of me, saying, here's the things you're doing well. Here's the things you're doing okay, but we could use some improvement. And here's the areas where you just need to get better. Like this isn't cutting it. Because in my culture of my organization, and just for context, I have 1 full-time employee and I have 2 1099 part-time employees that kind of come in, actually 4 employees who come in strategically for different things over the course of a year. And, I personally think of employees as anyone you work with. That's why I like to actually consider them team members.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Not employees, right? These are team members. And I bring different team members to bear on different projects and for different things we need. All of them, though, get that opportunity to regularly give me feedback. Because I think it's a lot easier for a team member to receive feedback if they feel like the feedback train is mutually running in both directions.
So true. So true. And I absolutely love that. And again, you're going to get better. They're going to get better. I am taking this on in our business. I am going to do this because we have someone that's worked with us for a few months, but nowhere near the experience that you're talking about. And really, it's what was needed. There's a lot of knowledge transfer. We're a virtual business. We have team members all over the place. We were before, but we used to have a few that worked in the same office. But now it's 100% because of COVID. We're 100% virtual and we'll never go back. I shouldn't say never. I know that's maybe never, but maybe someday.
Michael, the research shows you'll never go back.
We'll never go back.
The data indicates you will never go back. And frankly, why would you?
Why would we, right?
Why would you? When we look at the increase in efficiency, the increase in productivity, the increase in people being able to better balance and manage their lives, 30%. Let's pull some quick research because I'm a big research guy, right?
Yes, love it.
Pre-COVID, 30% of Americans, now I recognize we have listeners around the world, so forgive me for this Amerocentric data, but it's the only one I have right now.
There's lots of data there. We'll use it.
30% of Americans were super commuters. What that means is they spent more than an hour and a half, 90 minutes, traveling to work each day and home from work. So they spent more than an hour and a half commuting. What were they giving up during that commute time? Well, they were giving up their personal time because they weren't being paid to commute. So that wasn't on the employer's dime. That was on their clock and their dime. When we can give our employees an hour and a half plus per day by not having to go any further than walking from your bedroom to your home office, we've just given them something that's actually more valuable than money for the typical member of the team. Now, to your point, do we need to get together in person as well? Absolutely. And the research shows if you have a purely remote team, you should do everything you can to get together at least twice a year in person. Not once a year, twice. And what that does to build culture and build foundation is brilliant. One of the case studies in the book has 30 employees across 17 time zones globally.
Wow.
Stop and think about managing that type of culture versus you have one or two employees and you're both in the same time zone or at least in the same continent. So you're maybe 2 or 3 time zones apart as opposed to literally chasing the sun across 17 time zones. It can be done if you're a purely virtual organization, and many are and more will be in the future, but it requires a different level of thought and a different level of commitment.
It certainly does. It certainly does. And I mean, it's so amazing when you think about it. Those 90 minutes, they're paying for it out of their life hours. They are also paying gasoline, transportation costs, huge, right? And it's kind of interesting too, because if you let them get rid of that, it's like you get all the bonus. It's like, thank you.
100%,
right?
Well, here's the thing, because then what are they going to spend that hour and a half doing? They're either going to be doing work for you, or they are going to be doing their personal life things they need to do, spending time with their family, getting the kids off to school, doing laundry, cleaning the house, paying bills, having conversations. They're going to be sleeping. They're going to be clearing things off their to-do list that will allow them to be more focused and more present when they're at work. I don't understand the problem here. I talk to leaders all the time and they say to me, well, Joey, how do I know they're working at home? How did you know they were working at the office?
That's right.
Were you standing behind them, checking to see whether they were on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter versus being in their email? Were you paying attention to whether they were ordering things online during the business day or not? No, because if you feel that you need that level of surveillance and oversight on your team, I'd like to pause that conversation and have a giant conversation about your hiring process and whether or not you are showing your people trust first.
Absolutely.
If you're not bringing in the kind of people you can trust to do the work that needs to be done, why are you hiring them in the first place? And number 2, why do you care about the hours they work when you have the opportunity to care about the results they create? One of the things I said early on with my team is, hey, we're going to have goals, weekly goals, monthly goals, quarterly goals. If you can achieve your weekly goal in 3 days, you're done working. I don't need you to work 5 days to create some fiction if you're hitting the mark. And what I have is I have team members who are like, Joey, I can get this done faster than the 5 days you think it'll take. Great. How about I pay you the same, whether it takes 3 or 5 days, but we move faster because you did it in 3 and you just got 2 days off.
Absolutely.
My employees will run through fire for me as a result because I'm like, hey, as long as we're hitting our goals, I don't care what hours you're logging. Now, let me be abundantly clear. We also build into our structure that there are certain hours that we are available for our clients, and someone needs to be available during that time. But I'm willing to say that the whole team doesn't have to be available during that time. We just need to have someone. And by the way, that someone could be me, not just the team.
That's right.
And so one of my team members messaged me and it's like, hey, have to go to the doctor unexpectedly today. Great. No problem. I'm sorry you have to go to the doctor. Thanks for letting me know. I will cover. Do you think that employee, that team member is going to be more excited about where they work tomorrow than they were today?
Absolutely.
Yes. Why? Because I treated them like a human being. I did to them. The golden rule, right? The golden rule, do unto others as we would have done unto us. It applies with your team members, with your employees as well. Treat your team members the way you hope they will treat you, and everything sorts itself out, I promise.
Amen to that. Amen to that. I tell you, it's the human side of things. When you just start to look at it like that, the human side of it really shines. And I've heard similar conversations from, I've got some family members worked on Bay Street, which is in Canada here, the Wall Street. And they're like, we need people back in the office, the job shadowing and the mentoring that's not happening. It's a huge problem. And so it's I hear the trust thing as well. I've heard that comment. It's like, well, how will I know that they're doing the work? And you nailed that. I think what you're talking about with the shadowing starts to deliver on the mentoring in a virtual world is, well, you just got to spend more time together in a virtual setting, perhaps doing that kind of a shadowing, which then starts to have people build a virtual relationship where they can transfer that knowledge.
Absolutely. And Michael, two thoughts on that, if I may. Number one, when I hear that pushback from business leaders, what I often ask is for them to show me their mentoring success data pre-COVID. And invariably they're like, well, we were just, I'm like, great. This sounds like anecdata I'm about to hear. Like
yes.
Made up BS anecdotal data. Now, let me be abundantly clear. Do I think there is value from in-person interactions? 100%. Do I think you need to be having in-person analog live human interactions on a regular basis? Yes, we need this as a species. But let's stop pretending that we were just crushing it on the mentoring pre-COVID. Okay, we were.
I love that
we
you said that. So
period.
Funny.
Okay,
yeah.
So if that is your premise for why you want people back in the office, I would now like to see your plan for mentorship. How you are going to track it, how you are going to measure it, how you are going to create it in an in-person environment. And then as a thought exercise, I'm going to ask you, just for giggles, we don't have to do it, try to make that plan work virtually. The smartest people I know are like, well, actually, now that you mentioned it, Joey, we could make it work virtually. Great. So why don't we start rolling it out now before everyone's back in the office to see how it's going? And maybe we can achieve this same thing without having everyone there. The way I often know, Michael, whether someone's motives behind getting everybody back to the office are altruistic or not, is I ask them, great, let's say we had everyone come to the office tomorrow. What if we could wave a magic wand and everyone would be back in the office tomorrow? What's going to be different compared to what being in the office at this time of year was in 2019, pre-COVID? And what I often get is a lot of blank stares. Well, we'll all be together. Great. What are we going to do differently? How are we going to value this time in a way that we didn't before? Because all the data shows we weren't valuing it before. So what are we going to do differently? This is like when companies plan offsites. They're like, oh, we're a remote company and we're going to get everybody together for 3 days. And what we're going to do is we're all going to sit at a table with our laptops and work.
Yeah.
How is that much different from your virtual work? If you're going to bring everybody together for a team retreat, what if we had no meetings? What if we brought everybody together from the team retreat and it was all about spending time together, enjoying 2 or 3 hour meals, doing a fun hike together, or, having a shared experience? Do the things to build connection, personal and emotional connection with your people, instead of crossing off tasks. Crossing off tasks can be done often as a solo opportunity. Collaborative learning, collaborative experience creating, that is easier to do in person. And your investment of your time and your effort and your energy and your resources to get everybody together in person is more valuable as a result.
Amazing. Some really interesting stuff that's been banging around actually in my head in these conversations, as I said, and I just love your take on it. And I think that's why you've been, one of the reasons why you've been so successful is the angle to the science, right? Show me the numbers. Let's look at the data. It really puts it solidifies the knowledge with the facts and what people have looked at, studied, and understood. And so thank you for bringing that to us. It's refreshing. It's definitely refreshing. And from reading your small piece of your new book, Joey, of course, I haven't read the whole thing and gone deep into it, but one of the things I noted was there are a ton of resources, checklists, things, how to do it, scripts, examples of what were said, lots of case studies to inspire educate, and then, but the checklists and the tools, I think that's interesting. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Michael, I appreciate that you noticed that and found value in that, because that was one of my goals in putting the book together. There are over 50 case studies from all 7 continents. And the reason for that is because I wanted anyone reading the book or listening to the book to be able to find an organization similar to theirs. They might not find exactly somebody in their same industry, but similar employee headcount, similar revenues, similar marketplace that they were serving. Because I know how humans think. And what often happens is when a human is exposed to a different way of thinking or feeling or believing or acting, they are skeptical. They say, well, sure, Joey, that sounds fine for you, but would it work for me? And what I wanted my book to be is very research driven, very case study example driven. These aren't just Joey's ideas. These are things that have worked in businesses around the world who look and feel and act like yours. And so hopefully you can find some learnings there. The other thing I wanted to do was acknowledge that most small business owners can't do a $500,000 employee experience engagement. They can't spend 20 hours a day, every day for the next 6 months on their employee experience. They maybe have 20 minutes today to think about their employee experience, or they may be able to spend $50 this month on a gift or a present for an employee. How do you do that effectively? How do you do that in a way that creates meaningful connection? And that was the goal of having, so many case studies. Now, to your point, the checklist, the scripts, the videos, all the bonuses that people can get are designed to actually give people the tools to put this into place now. One of the things we created in the book is called the vault. Okay. And the vault, we talk about it early on in the book. And then throughout the book, we call out little references to the vault, which is, hey, we've given you a taste of what this idea looks like, but we'd have to write almost an entirely separate book to really dive into all the detail. But don't worry, we've given you a lot of that by going to this website that's free. You can find the site, and you can go to the vault and download videos and PDFs and checklists and see things that will allow you to have even more of an example or a framework or a context for the ideas and the suggestions that are being made in the book.
Remarkable. It's a book that every listener needs to have on the shelf. It is so important, especially for a small business. It's the one thing, like you said, 50%. If you're going to hire a person, that's now 50%. But if you only have 1 or 2 staff, that's a huge percentage of your business. The resources, time, investment to get those staff, so important to keep them, have them be happy, productive, and contributing team members. This is a book that, listener, you need to get. And as well, this is a book you need to get every single one of the business owners you work with to buy, read, and start using the resources. Because I guarantee we're all small business owners here, but as well, your clients are business owners, and they desperately need great team members to be able to run their business as well. So what a great way to gift your clients, Christmas, the holidays, whatever you think you can gift your clients, get them a book like this, because Joey's put together something that not only is inspiring, really easy to read, but as well comes with all sorts of great resources that will help their business.
Michael, I so appreciate that. One little offer I'll make or suggestion I'll throw out, because I've seen so many readers already doing this. They've decided to start a book club. Not only with key members of their team, but with other clients and leaders.
Wow.
Because here's the thing. If you go to almost any business leader today and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being Joey, it's a nightmare, and 10 being, oh, Joey, it's perfect, everything's good, where would you score your current situation with your team, your employees, your people? Many of those scores are lower than people want to admit. And they're not that great. And so to be able to say, hey, we're going to do a book club with our clients. And here's the great entree for bookkeepers. Most of you are helping them figure out things like payroll, You know how many employees they have. You know what their turnover has been. You know how many new hires they're bringing on and losing. You know whether this is a problem or not. If you go to those leaders and you say, hey, we're going to put together this book club. We're going to go through this book. It's got great ideas. And we're going to be here as your bookkeeper to help you implement these and figure out how to pay for them and figure out how to put some of these structures in place. You've now just elevated the conversation from you are a task-driven bookkeeper who deals with things after the money's been spent to you are a strategic partner who's helping us to grow our business, to think more logically and long-term about our business, and to help us put in the processes that will allow us to achieve the goals we have. You've just shifted the role you play in their mindset and how much more valuable you've become as a service provider. So I highly recommend folks check it out. We also have a book club guide that has questions, so you can actually lead the book club. And I've created the document that lets you lead it so you don't have to do any extra work. And you can walk people through a book club. So you look like a rock star, and you've basically had a way to provide even more value to your friends, your colleagues, your other folks in your mastermind group or your networking group, and or the client leaders you serve.
Wow, what a big lump of gold, and you've packaged it all up for us with a bow. I mean, book club for business owners, great way for existing clients. What a great way for networking and outreach. Go find some business owners and connect with them on a book club and use this book as a resource for that. Amazing. Amazing. Joy, I absolutely love it. And as always, it was such a pleasure to have you on the show. Your generosity. On behalf of our listener, I just want to thank you for being on the show.
Oh, Michael, it is my pleasure. Thanks to everybody who listened in. And I wish all of you the very best as you go out and try to create the kind of remarkable experiences that will keep your people coming back for more, whether those are your team members, your employees, or your customers and clients. You're remarkable. Let's let the other people you interact with see that on a more regular basis.
I love that. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye. And of course, we talked about all sorts of links and access, and we'll have all of those in the show notes about Joey and his book and where you can find all of that good stuff. So thank you, and we'll see you later.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.